All right. So this evening, we're going to be continuing our discussion in regards to contracts, but we're also going to be going in discussing some more about contingencies, addenda, and amendments as well. So the first thing that we're going to start with is we want to identify the common contingencies that are included in sales contracts. We're also going to state the purpose of using a loan contingency. We're also going to identify the possible ramifications of an appraisal contingency. Further, we'll explain the use of an approval of homeowner or condominium document contingency. We'll explain the types of inspections sometimes required or requested by a buyer. We're also going to identify the types of hazardous substances frequently covered within an inspection. We'll further discuss the benefits and the risk of allowing a sale of property contingency, and describe an amendment and how and when it is used, and also describe an amendment or addendum and how and when it is used as well. So before we get started, I do want to pull up here for y'all. Let me see here if it'll come up on that screen. There we go. All right. So what I want to pull up here is the contract, the 1-to-4 family. Like I said, the 1-to-4 family is primarily going to be the main contract that you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. So let's pull that up real quick. So when we're talking about contingencies, some of the key things that we're going to be discussing here, of course, is we want to look through here and kind of go through it. Now, we're going to go through it today. We'll probably go through it tomorrow and continue throughout the rest of this class into the next class. But the reason we spend so much time on this contract is because of the fact is you're going to deal with this 99.99% of the time, okay? And it's going to be something that you need to be aware of so that you can end up having a working knowledge of it. So in this particular situation, as you can end up seeing here, like we said, at the beginning, we have our parties, we have our property, okay? But if you notice here, look at 2, how big 2 goes from here all the way down to here. All of this is basically discussing what exactly is going to end up going with the property. So, of course, land is going to transfer. Now, if you notice, A only deals with the land. It's not actually dealing with the house, okay? So when we're talking about this, A is only talking about the land that you see, that you walk on. Even though there's a house on it, what we're talking about is A is just the land, not the house. B is actually where they're talking about the house, okay? Where it says B, improvements, the house, the garage, and other fixtures and improvements attached to the above described real property. Okay, so when we're dealing with this, A is the raw land, B is actually the house, and any items that are permanently installed or built in. Now, this is very key, okay? Anything that is listed in B must transfer. It must transfer. There are no options unless it's excluded down here in D, okay? So whatever is written in here, if it is if your client wants to take, say, for example, lighting fixtures, then if they're going to take it, they need to put it down in D if they're going to take it. Otherwise, everything that is in B and C is going to convey. It's going to go to the buyer, okay? So one of the key things when you're dealing with this is that we have to make certain, because if you notice here, this is kind of one of the biggest ones that I have that I deal with a lot, is that one right there, mirrors. Person goes down to At Home or goes to another property place, a designer store. They buy a very fancy mirror. They put it in the bathroom, and they're under the assumption, the seller is, I'm taking that with me. I spent a ton of money. I'm taking that thing with me. Well, what does it say up there, Wyatt? Does it go with the seller when they leave? No. Stays with the property. So whatever is situated within B or C, it's going to the buyer, period, unless it is excluded in D. So whenever your clients are going through these things, you need to tell them, whatever is in B or C, these things convey unless you tell them otherwise. it's not down here, you ain't taking it with you, period. Okay? So it's imperative that you understand that. Now, this paragraph 3 here, this is basically your contingency. Okay? This is where we're talking about our financing contingency. So A, of course, is the total amount that they're going to put down in cash. Okay, they're actually going to put in cash. But B is the financing that they're going to get. And we're going to talk about these addendums in a little bit. But they have to meet certain requirements. One of the biggest things that you can do that can kill your deal, say, Colton, in this situation, that you go over and you decide that I'm going to go over and my client decides to tell me, how could we say this? My client ends up telling me that they're going to be closing on their property. You're representing, let's say, Wyatt here. Let's just play this out, okay? You're representing Wyatt. Wyatt goes over and tells you, says, can I end up in this situation? Can I go buy a new vehicle? You want to buy a new race car, okay? But you're under contract. In this particular situation, Colton tells you, you do not need to be buying any property, anything that's a big cost. The reason being is when we get to these addendums, okay, we get in third party, loan, seller financing, you cannot change your position financially, okay? So Colton goes over and he tells you, he says, don't be buying any cars or anything that goes on credit because it's going to throw off your debt to income ratio. We'll talk about that later. So you go over and you say, okay, I'm not going to buy it. Well, if you buy it, you broke your contingency, because the contingency is you agree that you're not going to do any major purchases while you're currently under contract. Do you see what I'm saying here? Okay. So when we talk about contingencies, the client must not in any shape or form jeopardize their financing, because if they do, what ends up happening by them jeopardizing their financing, they end up jeopardizing this entire deal. Case in point, I had an agent that was on my team years and years ago, and he told his client, he said, you know, you need to don't do anything, don't buy anything, all of this. We always tell our clients that. Client goes over, his granddaughter graduated from college, went and co-signed on a car for his granddaughter. He's like, what's the harm of it? I'm co-signing for my granddaughter on a car. I'm not signing for it, I'm just co-signing. By him doing that, what ended up happening was he ended up creating an increase in his debt to income, threw off the entire transaction, and ended up getting him sued. So the key point in this situation, case in point, is that your clients do not need to be making any major purchases while they're under contract. It's a breach of their duty, can actually get them sued. Okay. So let me move over for a minute. Let's go back to this part. Okay. Yes, sir.
So is that because there would be like a liability towards the contract?
So let's say this. You and me.
Yeah.
You're buying my house. Okay. You told me that you're buying my house and you're closing December 31st. I've already found a new house. I'm buying Garrett's house. Went and got my offer, but I'm waiting for you to close on mine so I can buy Garrett's. Okay. You go and get a new car because you bought a brand new car. Your debt is now higher than what it was, which throws everything off of proportion, which the bank now says you ain't getting the car. I mean, the house, because you bought the car. Because of that, you can't buy my house. Since you can't buy my house and you have a duty to buy my house, now I can't buy Garrett's house. Now what's ended up happening is I'm damaged, so I can turn around and sue you because Garrett's going to turn around and sue me. You see how this works? So we have to make certain that we fulfill our duties. When you make a promise with somebody, you can't break that promise. You break that promise, you now are breach of contract, you can be sued. Does that make sense? And if you did it fraudulently, you can be sued 3 times the amount that you caused damages. Okay? So now going back here to contingencies. Contingencies in this situation is, as it says, It's additional conditions that must be satisfied before a sales contract is fully enforceable, okay? One of them could end up being that financing. If I can't end up getting financing, then my contract's not going to be fully enforceable because I can't get financing, okay? These are ways that we can create things that allows us to create what's called a voidable contract. If the contingencies are rejected or not satisfied, then the contract is void on its face because not all elements have been met, okay? So in this particular situation, there are multiple types of contingencies, okay, that can be created, multiple types of contingencies. You can have inspections, you can have financing, you can have sale of other property. There are many different types of contingencies that do get created. You just have to be aware of them, okay? Does everybody kind of understand that in here? Y'all good with that, okay? All right. Now, the elements for a contingency. Number one, the very first one is the actions necessary to satisfy the contingency. We have to know exactly what is the action that is going to be required or what is necessary, okay? With financing, Colton, you tell me in this situation, you say, Mr. Nobles, I want to buy your house from you. I say, sure, no problem, man, we're good. But you say, before I can buy it, I need to get approved to get a loan, okay? The action here is you got to go get approval, okay? So by doing that, the first element of a contingency is you got to go get pre-approved. What happens, Colton, in this situation? Wyatt here is the lender, and Wyatt checks your credit, and you got bad credit. What do you think the next action or next step you need to take? Fix your what? Fix your credit, okay? So your action is you would need to fix your credit. So one of the elements in a contingency is you got to get your credit fixed. Now, of course, Wyatt as a lender is going to help you, but in that situation, you also have to, in return, agree to actually do what Wyatt tells you. That's where we have issues a lot. Now, the time frame within which the actions must be performed. So say you're buying my house, I say, sure, come on and buy my house. You put a contract in and all, and Wyatt tells you, Colton, in this situation, we're looking at possibly about, say, 6 months before you can buy Mr. Noble's house, okay? Well, the time frame is that within 6 months, you'll be able to buy my house. So that's my next element. How is the contingency going to be removed? Well, how's it going to be removed? You got a pre-approval letter, okay? You've been pre-approved. Who's going to be responsible for the cost? Well, in this situation, if it's for you, it's your credit, you'd be responsible for it, okay? These are all going to be contingencies. These are all different elements. However, like we talked about in contracts, each one of these, there's 4 of them, has to be fulfilled for it to be a contingency. That makes sense, okay? Wyatt, you good? Okay. Now, these are the important ones. These are the ones that you will see in real estate on a daily basis. We deal with these all the time. The first and most important one is the mortgage contingency, okay? A mortgage contingency is going to protect the buyer's earnest money until a lender actually is going to commit the mortgage loan funds, okay? So in this particular situation, in this particular element, what is occurring here is that the buyer's earnest money, when you come over, Colton, and you tell me, okay, you say, Mr. Nobles, I want to purchase your house. You're going to put down earnest money. Earnest money is your serious intent that you're actually going to buy my house, okay? Because it's kind of like me coming up to you saying, hey, Colton, man, I'm going to buy your truck from you. Just hold me at my word, okay? Is my word worth anything to you, Colton? Not one thing, right? So in that situation, you want something to show that I'm serious. Same thing in buying a house. We want to make certain that what you're saying, you're putting your money where your mouth is, as they say, okay? So it protects the buyer's earnest money until a lender commits the mortgage loan funds. Once that occurs, it'll also protect the seller if there is a time limit on that contingency Upon expiration, the seller can void the contract and put the house back on the market. What all of this ultimately does, and what it comes back to is in this situation, it allows me to make certain that you are serious, Colton, but it also protects me in a situation that I can step away if you can't fulfill your obligation. Okay? So good point. Good point. Let's go back for a minute. Let's go back to the previous slide. So remember, these are your four elements here. Okay, so you have 4 elements. So the actions necessary, you got to get pre-approved, but you got to have that time limit, right? So you tell me, Justin, I want to buy your house. I'm going to give you 6 months. Okay, so within 6 months, you've got to get your credit fixed to get pre-approved. Once you've ended up doing that, how are we going to get it removed? That's by you ending up giving me a pre-approval letter saying I have now been pre-approved. You see how that works? Now, who's responsible in this situation for this one, for mortgage, is going to be you because it benefits you, not me. Do you see how that works there? Okay, so you have to have these 4 elements in order for it to be able to benefit you. Makes sense there. See how these are coming together? So with that being said, it protects the buyer's earnest money so you don't lose your money if you can't get pre-approved. Say that Wyatt, here we go again, Wyatt goes over, he's your lender, and he ends up, he looks at your stuff and he's like, dude, really? Man, I can't get you approved. I'm sorry, man. Well, you don't want to lose out on your earnest money that you told me that you'd give me because you did everything you could and it just didn't fall through. So in that situation, you'd get your earnest money back. But it also gives me a time limit in order which I can step back, if you see what I'm saying. I can come over and I can step back and I can say, you know what, Colton, you're taking too long. So 6 months has already lapsed. I'm going into 6 months and 2 days. I got to pull out, man. I got to go sell to somebody else. Do you see how this works here? Okay. Wyatt, are you good with this?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody, if y'all are online, you got any messages again, y'all know how to just speak up. Feel free to speak up here. All right. So now the next one, and the most important one in this situation, is going to be dealing with our appraisal contingencies. Okay. The appraisal contingencies in this particular situation is basically where it's going to substantiate the purchase price and ensure that the financing described in the contracts are actually going to be feasible. Okay. So in this particular situation, the appraisal is going to be on every property that's going to have third-party financing. Okay. So no matter who you deal with, if there's going to be financing, it is going to be utilized through the appraisal contingency. Okay. So coming back to this in this situation, say that Garrett, you go over, you found a house that you really like, that you ended up, that you want to purchase, but you're using financing. What happens is if in this particular situation, the appraisal does not come back, say that Garrett is buying the house for $300,000, the appraiser comes back and says it is only worth $250,000. Because it comes back at $250,000, guess what ends up happening? Garrett does not want to end up buying a house that's only $250,000 and he's paying $300,000. Am I right there, Garrett?
Yes, sir.
There we go. So Mr. Garrett, stay on for a minute here with me. So Mr. Garrett, he does not want to pay $300,000 for something that's $250,000. Now, Mr. Garrett, let me ask you this question. Do you want to be stuck into a contract that you can't ever get out of because you are paying overpriced?
No, sir.
Not at all, right? So in this particular situation, what happens here is this, is we want to allow a way for people to be able to bag out. So if the purchase price that we're trying to find is not going to be the exact appraised value, it's going to ensure that the financing that's described in the contract is actually going to be feasible. It allows Garrett to do what? It allows you, Garrett, to do what? If you have a contingency, what can you end up doing? Do you remember?
Back out of the contract.
That is correct. You can back out of the contract. You can walk away from it. Okay. Very good on that, Garrett. Thank you, sir. So what happens is Garrett steps back. Garrett says, I'm not buying this house. Okay. He says, I'm finished. I'm done. All right. So he wants to have a way to bag out, and he also wants a way to get his earnest money back. Okay. Put it in more of y'all's terms, more in layman's terms for you. Okay, Mr. Colton here, you got your new vehicle out there. Okay, sir. Would you want to pay, say you bought that car for $30,000? What would you do? Worst case scenario, you buy it $30,000. You came over and found out I had the exact one you bought, and I paid $20,000. How'd you feel? You'd want to be able to go back to get out of it, right? But in a car, can you do that, unfortunately? No, you're stuck, right? In a house, you're actually required to go get somebody to check out. How much is that car worth? Oh man, there's 30, they're asking 20. It's a horrible deal. Go get this one. You see what I'm saying? If you get into this, you can step away from it, okay? So the key point here in this situation is that the appraisal contingency allows for you to step away so that you're not locked into a deal feeling buyer's remorse is what we call it, okay? And they're going to bring that to your attention. When you take your test, they're going to say, what's the purpose of contingencies? It's to not have buyer's remorse. You don't want to have buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse is the worst thing that you can end up having. You don't want to get locked into something and find out, crap, I got screwed. Now what do I do? Does that make sense with everybody? Okay. Now, LTV, loan to value ratio, is the percentage of the sales price that the lender will allow a buyer to borrow. Now, it's very important that y'all understand this. In a LTV, and I'm picking on Colton a lot today because this is his first time in class. I got to pick one, man. So you got to enjoy that, right? Gonna ask you a question, Colton, here. Okay. How much do you think you got to put down in order to purchase a house? What percentage?
Probably like 5-15%.
So you say 5 to 15? Okay. You want to know what it really is? 3.5. All you got to put down. So if you're buying a $100,000 house, how much you got to put down? It's for your personal residence. It's 3.5 of 100,000. 3,500. So you only got to put down $3,500 to buy a $100,000 house. That's not bad, right? What do you think? Pretty good. Miss Linda, Mr. Eugene, is that bad? Not at all. Okay. But here's the thing. Okay. When you do that, and there's also, by the way, if you're in a USDA district, you can buy a house for $500. You got $500, so you can go buy your house. Now, what's the problem with that, Miss Linda? Say Colton has $500 here. Okay. Colton has $500. He's buying a house in the USDA district. Colton, how old are you? 19. Do we look at age at all when we're giving loans out? Can we look at age? No, we cannot look at age. Mm-mm.
To look for him purchase a home?
Yeah. No. So in this situation, here's the thing. And Mr. Colton here, he could buy a house for $500, couldn't he?
Yes, he could.
Do you think that's a wise choice for Mr. Colton at 19 to be buying a house?
Honestly?
Be truthful. No, why? What's the problem, Mr. Eugene? Why are you shaking your head so much?
And the mortgage have a higher rate, higher.
It'll have higher interest, but here's the problem. Do you think he's going to be able to sustain a mortgage payment?
I don't think so.
Does he have the knowledge and the experience and all to handle all of that stuff right now? Not at the moment. Not that you're a bad person, Colton. What the thing is the fact is, it's not a wise idea to put somebody in that position that could end up being failed. You don't want to be set up for failure, right? Nobody wants to be set up for failure. So in this particular situation, we create this loan to value. And what that does, the LTV, is we look at your particular situation here, look at your portfolio, and we make a determination that we're only going to allow you out of your monthly bills that you bring in. Let's say you bring in $2,000 a month, okay? We're only going to allow you to spend 30% of that. That's it for your mortgage. Well, if I take 1,000 at 30%, how much is that, Colton? $300 times 2, because we're doing $2,000 a month. So it's how much? $600. Colton, how big of a house are you getting at $600? Not a big house at all. If you do, it's going to be really, really tiny, right? If that, maybe 700. Tiny home in a very bad part of town. Okay, you want to live there? Not at all, right? So the key thing in this situation is they put loan to values. Okay, we don't want to put a person in a home that they can't afford. So the LTV is basically your percentage of the sales price that the lender will allow the borrower to buy. What exactly are they going to be able to purchase? Now, another one is your title contingency. And a title contingency basically ensures that the purchaser receives clear title to the property. Okay? We want to make certain that in this particular situation, that say in this one, Keith, when he buys the property, Keith, you here tonight, sir?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Can you stay on for me for just a minute, sir?
Gotcha.
All right, Mr. Keith. I'm getting a lot of feedback from you here. Let's see. Here we go. I'll get away from the speaker. All right. So, Mr. Keith, my question for you, sir, is that would you want to buy a house from Mr. Wyatt here, who ends up, we're not even certain that Mr. Wyatt owns the house. Do you want to buy that house from him?
No.
Not at all, right?
No, sir.
Because what's our problem if you buy that house? What happens, Mr. Keith?
He doesn't own it.
He doesn't own it. So if he don't own it, what could come out? What could happen? You could lose all your money, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you are not going to be happy, but Mr. Wyatt's going to be happy because he just walked away with your money, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So there's a problem here. So in this particular situation, a title contingency makes certain that Wyatt is not just going around acting like he owns a piece of property. And I'm going to tell you a little secret here how Mr. Wyatt does this. So there's a deed out there. We'll talk about this more in another class. It's called a quitclaim deed. Okay. A quitclaim deed in this particular situation is Mr. Wyatt can actually sign a quitclaim deed to any property. Any property. Miss Linda, Wyatt could go over to your property and he could end up act like he is in your property, and he could sign over a deed to Mr. Keith, fill out your address and everything, put his name on it, sign over a quitclaim, give it to Mr. D, take the money and walk away. And guess what? He has violated no laws. No laws. Yeah. It's called a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed is utilized this way. Okay. Mr. Wyatt goes over. You got to understand. You don't know if Mr. Wyatt ain't related to you, or he may have some interest in your property. Mr. Wyatt goes over, he can fill out a form, and he's basically relinquishing any of his interest he might have in your property. So he may or may not have interest in your property, but if he does, he's saying, okay, here you go, Keith, here's my interest. I might or might not, but here you go. Now, in that situation, 99.99% of the chance, do you have any interest in their property? But there might be a 0.000000001% chance that he might. So by him doing that, he's not breaking any laws. No, he's just signing over his interest. So I can go to, say, Mr. Garrett, his property. I could go over there and sign over my interest in a quitclaim deed to Mr. Garrett in y'all's property. And if I have any interest right now, he could get it. But right now, do I have any interest in y'all's property? Not one bit. So he ain't getting nothing. But he knows nothing of that. Okay? And I have done no interest whatsoever or no violations because I just said I might have interest in this property. And if I do, I'm giving it to you. Huh? That's the key word. Might. I might have interest in that particular property. but I don't have it and I know it, but I'm selling over my potential interest to them.
They buy it, they have nothing, and then you got away with money.
That's correct.
No law or nothing to stop.
That's correct, because I gave away my potential interest in the property. Aren't you loving this already?
Okay, but when they do a appraisal or whatever,
Oh, I'd be long gone before that process happens. I'd be long gone before that process happens. Miss Nobles, for those of you online, she's like, well, when they do the appraisal, I said, oh, no, I'd be long gone before that happens. Because that's too much. I've been there too much. I'm gonna have you sign that sheet of paper and I'm gone.
and I'm gonna be hunting too.
Good luck finding me because the name I use ain't real either. So, but that's what happens. Okay. You do end up in some of these situations. You do have these differences. Okay. You do have these different types of behaviors. You are going to have clear title, but the title contingency basically creates this creation of, does the individual that I'm buying, do they actually have full ownership? Okay. Another thing is, and a lot of people get this confused. We go back to Colton, you're buying Wyatt's property. He might actually own his house. But what you don't know is, and he didn't disclose to you, he has a lien against this property from 10 years ago. You don't want to buy that property because if you buy that property, what do you think happens to that lien? Who now owes it? It's going to you. A lien is a debt that's attached to that property. So say, for example, let's play this out here. Mr. Eugene, 10 years ago, went over here and built a swimming pool in the back of Wyatt's property. Wyatt ended up, after he finished, never paid Mr. Eugene. Now, can Mr. Eugene just go pick up a pool and take it with him, like repo a pool? No, it's stuck in the ground, right? So in this situation, Mr. Eugene has no option but to attach to his property for the debt. So Mr. Eugene puts a debt on his property and it's attached to it. Wyatt never pays it, but the moment he sells it, that debt has to be paid. Okay. And if he doesn't pay, or if he doesn't pay it, guess who gets to pay it? That's correct. Do you see how that works? So in that particular situation, when they do a title search, they don't look at just, does Wyatt have clear title? But the question is there any attachments that have been put on that title that he's not paid? Do you see how that works? Okay. So in that situation, a title contingency is going to ensure that you, in this situation, the purchaser, when you purchase it, you're actually getting clear title to the property, not encumbered property, which means there's an attachment to the property. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, an approval of homeowners or condominium association documents contingency may be mandated by state regulations. Another thing, say that when they do a title search on this property that you're buying, Wyatt in this situation, he does have clear title. But what you don't know is there could be two things. We're going to play two things. He could owe his HOA or his HOA association. Okay, he could have a debt with them. You buy the property, it goes to you. You need to know that. Another thing is, if the HOA is going to increase their expenses, say that you're buying a property and you're going to move into this property. Well, the reason you're buying it is because the HOA is $100 a year. So you're like, heck yeah, that's a steal. I'm going to go live here. What you don't know, had you not done a search, is that's going to go up to $1,200 a month in the next 6 months. Now, do you still want to buy that property? Not at all. So in that particular situation, that's where an HOA contingency allows you the opportunity to see, are we going to increase any expenses? And if so, do I still want to buy that property? Because I still have to pay my mortgage and interest here, but I also would have to pay this HOA. You see how those come together? Okay, y'all good? Okay. Now, inspections. These are the best ones. Inspection contingencies. So once you end up purchasing a property or put an offer, scratch that, put an offer in, you're going to do a home inspection. Now, what is the point, Mr. Eugene, of a home inspection? Why do we want to have a home inspection?
Well, we don't want no damages to the structure. We don't want no leakage or holy roof or anything like that.
Why would you not want a hole in the roof, or why wouldn't you want structural damage? That's good stuff, right, Colton? Like, you know, your house caving in, that's good, right? No? Miss Linda, right? Come on, right? Why wouldn't you want those things? Come on, Wyatt, right? You want a hole in the roof, right? Look at the natural light that you get. You put a hole up there, you get a bunch of natural light. There you go. So you said it does what? Keep going, Mr. Nobles.
Well, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, what if there's termites? You don't want that.
But they're pets.
Not that.
Free termites, they're pets.
No, they're not. Okay. They're to destroy your house.
Come on now, Colton. You would turn down a house over termites. I mean, think about all them free pets that you get in the walls. What about the cockroaches? You want those too, right? Man, y'all are some boring people in here. The key thing is yes, a home inspection does what? We want to make certain that there is a structure that's going to be sound. We don't want a structure that's going to end up in a situation that is going to be destructive, that's going to fall apart, that could have a fire hazard. We don't want any of those things. That's what a home inspection is for, okay? So a home inspection allows us to go in and find these particular elements that are up here on the board, okay? It allows you to see lead-based paint, termites, well and septic, underground storage tank. All of these are very important. Now, I want you to do something here for me. You ready? Mr. Wyatt, I want you to tell Mr. Colton for me the lead-based paint. What do we talk about the reason lead-based paint is so important? He wasn't here the other day to hear it. What's the lead-based paint? Why is it so important?
It's lethal. It kills people. It kills you if you
Ingest it? Exactly.
Yes, you gotta get checked. Wasn't it like lead-based paint? Wasn't it like alcohol? You had a lot of like.
What year?
I don't remember that.
19 what? 1978. Now what month? January 1st. So anything before January 1st, 1978, you have to give a lead-based paint disclosure notice. If you don't, and somebody gets sick, you yourself can physically go to jail criminally because they could end up dying from that.
But it was outlawed, correct?
It was outlawed prior to that point, but anything January 1st, 1978 or before, you have to give that disclosure. Okay, but it can actually end up killing a person, okay, and that's one of the reasons. We all know what termites are, okay, and I'll tell you something. If you get an FHA loan mandates, that's what that regulatory comes in, they mandate that you do what's called a WDI. You might want to write that down, WDI. WDI stands for wood destroying insects. I'll say that one more time. Wood destroying insects. Okay, you have to have a WDI with an FHA loan. If you do not, they will not fund your loan, period. No ifs, ands, buts about it. You have to have a WDI. Okay. Well and septic. Mr. Colton, does your parents have a well or septic on their property?
We have a well.
Okay. Why in the world would we want to go check a well system? Why do we need to inspect that?
If it's busted or lines or hoses leading into the property of the house are busted.
But that's no big deal, right? We don't care about that. It's like $2 fixed, right?
No.
How much does it cost?
In the thousands.
In the thousands. Do you see the key things here? And I use this purposely in my teaching style. I'm a little different. I use that to basically show you that it's important, right? It's material. Because let me ask, watch this. Say you're selling your parents' property. Mr. Eugene, do you want to buy his property if the well is falling apart? Why not?
I want water. When I go to the house, I want good water. And I don't want a well that don't work.
Well, just go dig in the ground till you hit some water.
No, they're going to do that before I get it.
Ah, do you see where it comes into? Do you see what that is? It's what we call a material fact. Okay? If a material fact makes you stop to rethink your decision, it's something that needs to be disclosed. Does everybody see how that works? It's very important. Coming back, if you're buying my house, Colton, and there's termites, would you reconsider your thought of buying my house? Yeah. Why is that?
I don't want to get into the home and the next thing I know, wake up without it.
Exactly. What about this right here? What's a septic? What's so worried about septic? Who cares about that?
Toilet, water.
Uh-huh. Sewer, basically. It's just the toilet water and all. Now, let me tell you, there are different types of septic systems, and one of them, they spray. You flush that toilet, goes down, and it sprays in your backyard. So it's basically spraying your stuff, your disposal, all in your backyard. You want that in your front yard? Why not? Think how green the grass would be. You don't want that? And think about the flies that you'd get. You don't want that, Wyatt? Come on, man. You're good.
Yes, sir.
So the key thing is, and I'll tell you, I make fun of these things, but it's the fact of the matter is I've seen it. Guy went in, he did his own septic. He had him dig it, but he went and moved all the stuff because he wanted to make his house look nice and green. So he put it right there in his front yard. So it'd be nice and green because it's fertilizer, right? So he put it in his front yard. Had we not done an inspection, his kids, the purchaser, was going to actually have their children run around the front yard. They're going to play basketball, baseball, all that stuff, just right there in the front yard. I mean, you want your children running around where your sewage is basically going. Not at all, okay? Actually, when I was showing the house, that was one of the things that was sprinkling, like they were going off. And he's like, well, the kids could run around through here. We didn't at the moment know because we hadn't done inspection that was septic water. Now, that's why you do inspections. See, what you all see when you start showing houses is it's not all HGTV perfect quality homes. You're going to see what actually happens and what people do. Guys, I have seen people take, I've seen more of this than anything else. I have seen people take electrical extension cords, and they will plug in and they will run it up, put a hose through it, and run it out to their other shed so their shed has power. Now, what's the problem with that, Colton?
Weathering, causing fire.
Yeah,
and lots of stuff.
a lot of dangerous stuff, right? So the key thing is in that situation, we do inspections because the fact is we want to make certain that these individuals actually have a house that we can go live in. Okay. Actually, I'll give you one last one that just happened the other day. Miss Linda, you didn't get to hear about this one because I got the text message and I was dealing with it. One of our agents, his girlfriend is living in a apartment, and she was in bed sleeping. And when that storm came through earlier this week or last week, whatever it was, Saturday or whatever, it was Saturday, actually, you're right. It was Saturday, the storm came through. She's sleeping and she starts hearing, she gets up, she walks around, and water had come down and was dripping onto her oven. What happens when you have one of those flat top ovens? They end up, that water kind of gets down into the elements and everything, and then they just almost caught a fire. He got up there and looked because he's a home inspector. He got up there and looked. Come to find out, some person, whoever dealt with it, had ended up, they, instead of actually fixing the roof, took some of that, what's that commercial, the one where he's like, put it on the bottom of the boat, you get in it, and you ride around, you know what I'm talking about? Flex Seal, yeah. He put some Flex Seal up there to fix a hole in the roof, and it was just dropping all the way just down onto her deal. Almost caught a fire. That's why it's important that you do inspections. Because the fact is, if she not have heard that, me and him both talked about it, what would have happened? That thing could have caught a fire and killed her. And here's the worst part. Her kitchen was right by her door. She's on the second floor. She would not have made it out, period. Okay. Underground storage tanks. Okay. Very important here. The key thing on this one is in this situation, a lot of times people will put things underground. But what happens is when you put stuff underground, what happens to that material? Mr. Eugene, you deal with a lot of metal things and all. What happens eventually when you put metal underground? What eventually happens? Starts to rot. And as it rots, what happens?
Well, if you got anything in it, that comes out.
Yeah. And let me ask you this question. What happens? Let's go back to Mr. Colton's well here. You put right next to the well an underground storage tank, and it starts rotting. Can that contaminate the sewer or the soil and end up going into his well and make him sick? Mm-hmm. So in that particular situation it's imperative that an inspection is done. One of the biggest ones, guys and gals, and my mother can kind of come back here and tell y'all this in the situation. A lot of times, Miss Linda, you can probably tell them some of the places around Grimes County, a lot of times, what do they do with, prior to this, what they used to do with old gas stations? Did they ever take out the well? No, what would they used to do? They just leave it in there, fill it up. So if the gas wasn't fully out of it, they just put sand and soil and all in it. Well, what happens to that soil around it? It absorbs it, becomes contaminated. You go dig a well, start putting a well in there, that stuff goes right into your well water, comes up, you drinking it. Not a good idea. Okay? So in that situation, it's very, very important that you have these inspections done. That's what the contingencies are. You want to have a full contingency. Here are the 4 biggest ones that they're going to test you on the exam, on the license exam. Huge. Very, very important here. Now, the first one is asbestos. Mr. Keith, what is asbestos, sir?
Yes. Is that the I'm not exactly for sure. Is that the mold?
Nope. Let me ask you this question. You from Navasota like me. Did your mama ever have in her house popcorn ceilings?
Yes.
That's your asbestos.
Yeah, that is. Mm-hmm.
That's your asbestos. Have you ever seen those sidings, especially in Navasota? You know that white siding that they normally paint it like a green? It's kind of like a powder, like it felt like a little powdery type substance that was hardened. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
That's also asbestos. Okay? Asbestos in that situation can kill you. If it is in if it's in a powdery form, it can kill you. If it's hardened, it can't kill you. But if it is popped, if you ever got up there and you started popping those little things on your ceiling and you inhaled it, too much of it can actually kill you. Okay? So in those situations, asbestos has to be properly handled, or if it's not done right, it can kill you. And I'll tell y'all guys, all of this, there's a lot of people that are starting to do this lately. They're going into these older homes and they're taking this little like tool. It's like a little knife with a vacuum cleaner, and they just go around and they scrape off that stuff, the popcorn. Okay? Here's the problem with that. When I'm up here pushing that with that vacuum cleaner, what's it doing, Miss Linda? It's all falling right in my face because it's sucking it with that stuff right into my face. And what am I doing? Breathing it in. It can kill you. Okay? That's why you have to, truthfully, in some situations, you have to have a hazmat suit on when you're doing this, because what can happen is it gets into your lungs and it can ultimately cause a lot of damage to you and ultimately end up, like I said, killing you. Another one, radon. Radon, let's see if anybody knows this. Most of y'all probably won't. Wyatt, you know what radon is? Colton?
Gas.
It's a gas. Do you know where it comes from, though?
But I know it's gas.
You're right. Mr. Eugene? Miss Linda? Okay. He's right. It's gases that are underneath their surface. Okay. Certain places, what happens is when you are standing in your house It's a very toxic gas, okay? And it can come up from underneath your floor and it can come into your house, okay? Where you often will see radon is often when you see underground places, like underground storage units, gassing places, anything that's underground, it's starting to rot, it sends up the gas, okay? Now, radon is similar with carbon monoxide, and the fact of the matter is if there's a lot of it high levels, it can be very toxic, okay? And it can also kill you. Now, radon is not really tested here in Bryan College Station, just because we don't see that as much. But as you go into more of your inner cities, you go into more of a place where there used to be a gas station, they tore it down and they built a high rise, you want to radon gas testing, because the fact is, was that unit actually removed? Otherwise, you might have radon underneath it. Carbon monoxide. Y'all all understand what carbon monoxide is? What is mode? Miss Linda, what's mode? Comes from wetness. The reason being with mode is mode ends up, it can also be toxic. Okay. I have a client that will tell you all three of these. He used to be a client. He would always tell me, and he still does send me stuff. Asbestos, radon, carbon monoxide, and mode are all hoax. They're not real. They're not real. They don't exist. This is all governmental conspiracy, and it all is fake, okay? So, and if I wanted to, and we had time, I'd bring him in here and I'd let him teach y'all his thinking, okay? But he said the biggest of them all is mode. I've been around since the 1950s, and I haven't had any problems, and I've lived in some crappy places, okay? Just because you may not have experienced anything doesn't mean that it isn't true, okay? The fact of the matter is mode, oftentimes, and the key things is, enjoys moist areas, okay? That's its thing. It enjoys moist areas. So the fact of the matter is, if it is a cold environment and it is moist, you're going to see mode. Where are the prime locations you're going to see mode? In the restroom, okay? And most of the time by the toilet or by the shower, okay? Colton and Wyatt, I'm going to ask y'all, did you, when you were younger, typical boys, did y'all used to get water on the floor and water on the sides or whatever when you took a shower? Yeah? What did mama used to always say to y'all? Dry it up, right? Stop making a mess. Miss Linda, why do y'all say stuff like that? That's correct. It can end up, it can cause mildew, and eventually enough of it will end up causing mode, and enough mode can end up causing you to have a hazardous substance, and then you have to have what's called a mode remediation, and that's where they have to come out and re-clean it. Guys, I have been in houses before with an inspector. Worst thing I ever saw. They had ended up, not to be gross, but they ended up, there was the kids, I guess, the guys did not know how to use the restroom right. And so there had been urine on the wall by the toilet. And it probably has been going like that at least 15 years. When I went to the inspection, we had to put a whole hazmat on and everything because it was a bad house. My inspector cut a little hole in the wall, and we pulled it out. And guys, there was mode. You saw very little, probably no more. It was down on the floor. I'm not going to get down there, but it's about that much of a spot that had mode. He cut out just a little circle. He pulled it out, and there was so much that had grown up that it had grown up the entire wall. In situations like that, you have to do what's called a mode remediation, meaning that entire wall has to be ripped down. Both sides have to be ripped down. They have to come in with a substance, spray down all the beams, clean all the stuff out, and end up kill that mode. Okay. Do you think it's cheap? No, it is not cheap. And once you rip it out, you get to come back and put it back up. Okay, so once you rip it out, you get to go back in there. But mold can end up being toxic. Okay, can have toxic pores that ends up giving out different types of chemicals in the air that can make you sick. Okay. Now, what about property sale? Property sale contingency is basically the buyer will buy if they can sell their current house. I'm in a situation right now. I'm drafting tomorrow a contract, and I'm including a addendum for a property sale contingency. In my addendum, I'm going to basically state that my client's property needs to sell before my buyers are able to purchase the house. Okay. My buyers, and this is kind of where it's a good thing in this situation, my buyers are ending up, they are basically, because they need to sell their house quick to buy this house, they normally would probably get about $240, $250 for their house. They're at this point dropping it to $232 to sell the house, okay, which is a steal. That's why I tell people a lot of times it can be good and bad. If you are the seller of the house and the buyer submits this, what does that normally tell you? Well, think about it. If they've got to sell their property to buy yours, correct, are they going to be willing to take anything just to get their house sold so they can move into the other one? Yeah. Because if y'all were a little late, what did we talk about earlier? There's a what? You asked me earlier. There's a time limit, right? So they have to sell their house within this time limit, and if they don't sell it within the time limit, what ends up happening? That's right. So in that situation is, we have to make certain in this one that the buyers will buy if they can sell theirs. So the buyer wants to end up selling theirs so they can buy. Okay, that's the key thing. So there is, of course, however, in this contingency, the sellers might want a kick-out clause. Okay, and this is normally standard. What happens here is, let's play this out, Colton. Me and you, ready? All right. Colton, you are ending up, you're wanting to buy my house. Okay, but you tell me I need to sell my house first before I can buy yours. Okay. Mr. Eugene comes in, wants to buy your property. You're wanting to list it for $250. Mr. Eugene comes in at $240. Now you have 2 weeks to get everything squared away to buy my property. If you were ending up, actually, Miss Linda, if you are his agent, would you advise Mr. Colton to take the offer? Or would you advise him to just say, you know what, no big deal, we'll just keep looking? Would you advise him?
I would ask him if this is the home that is that the dream home that he and his family want first. Because that is a commitment for a long time.
Okay.
If it is, then if that's what he wants, then I would advise him, let's take a chance at it. Let's see what happens within that 2 weeks' time.
So would you accept the offer or not accept the offer?
I would tell him to accept the offer.
The $240. Okay. So those of you online, Miss Linda said she would advise her clients to accept the offer. Mr. Colton, let me ask you. You weren't the client. What would you say? What if it was flipped? What if Miss Linda was the one buying and you're the agent? Would you advise your client to take the $240 or to hold off and see what else comes through?
Depending on how much money they have to play with on the side of, like, the money that they're going to make with the house that they're selling to buy the house they want to buy, I'd probably tell them to hold off and wait a little bit longer.
Okay.
I'd probably see if they can sign something to have that buyer hold off. So that way, so they doesn't know they can buy the house.
What if the buyer said, or the seller, I'm the seller here, I say, I'm not giving you any extensions. You have 2 weeks or I'm backing out because I got somebody else. What'd you do there?
Well, then, I mean, I hope that whoever else you have has like an offer that you want.
So you're going to tell Miss Linda to accept my $240? I tell you, you get one shot at this.
Probably accept, yeah.
You accept? You know what the answer is? There is no answer. The fact of the matter is this. You were right, and you were right. That's how it is. It's life. Okay? But in this situation, there will, and the point that I'm trying to get to is this. Agents lie a lot. It happens. It's how it is. I can tell you for a fact over my years, it's so funny. So funny. I'll submit an offer. Send over Mr. Eugene an offer here. So here you go, Mr. Eugene. My client wants to buy your client's house for $250. I know you got listed at $260. Here's $250. That's my response back for Mr. Eugene, and this will be for all of you. What do you think my response is, Miss Linda? Or from him.
From him?
Yeah, from him.
He's selling.
He's selling, and I just submitted him a contract to buy. What are you gonna say, Mr. Eugene? No, here's what.
No, that's 260.
But no, here's what's gonna happen. Here's what they actually say. They actually turn around and they'll counter back and say, well, I've got multiple offers on the table. You need to have your client submit the highest and best. Now, Colton, do you think they have multiple offers on the table? No. How many offers do you got?
Probably 1 to 0.
Just mine, right? That's it. But here's the thing. Do you know that? Nobody does. He could have them. But that's the problem with all of this, is that when you're dealing with these contracts, sometimes you got to gamble a little. You got to see. Sometimes you got to call their bluff. It happens. But basically what we're ending up looking at in this situation is that we want to look at making certain that the person gets the best deal while not losing out on the house. The key thing I liked about what you said, Ms. Noble, was you said if you were representing Colton, the first thing you would ask him is this your forever home? You always ask that question. How I present it is this. Colton, if you lose this house tomorrow, are you going to be upset? And if Colton tells me, no, I'm not, what does that tell me? It's not the house. It's not the house. I'm not interested in this one. So I have a chance to gamble, right? Okay. But Wyatt, what if he tells me, man, if I lose this house, I'm just going to continue to rent? What does that tell me?
That's the house that he wants.
That's the house. That's the one I want. That's it.
He's going to do whatever he can to get what he needs.
That's right. That's correct.
He'll have funds, or he'll find a way to get the funds.
He will make it happen. He wants you to make it happen. Okay. So in that particular situation, that's where you come into these contingencies. Now the seller might want what they said, a quick kickback clause. Now, if Colton puts an offer in and I accept his offer and it has a contingency, I may want a way to get out of this contract. I may want a way to say, you know what? He's taking too long. It's been 2 weeks. He hasn't even played around. Because here's the thing. Colton ends up, he submits an offer to me with a contingency. He says, I want 2 weeks to get pre-approved. Okay, I'll give it to you. Wyatt comes in, and Wyatt says, I'll buy your house list price and in cash and close in 2 days. Should I end up being bound to your offer? No? How many of y'all say no? No? Contract signed. I have a contract signed with him.
Oh, you have a contract signed?
I'm signed with you.
Then yes, you should, because you can sue if you bounce out of that contract.
See, I like how y'all bouncing around, especially y'all three from the other day. You should stay with your answer, your original answer. Even if we have a contract signed, if I have a kick-out clause, it allows me to keep the house on the market. And if the seller receives another offer, the original offeror, you have a stated period to move forward with your contract or not. So what happens is, let's play this out. You submit a contract to me, okay? With a contingency. We signed. Both of us have signed. We're good, okay? So me and him have signed. We're all good here. He needs 2 weeks. Wyatt comes in, says, I'll pay you in cash, close in 2 days, exactly what you want it listed, and you submit it with me, say 2,000 less. I have an obligation, number one, to come back to you and say, because you have a right to know, I have a full price offer in cash, close in 2 days. I want you to waive your contingency. If you refuse to waive your contingency, then I'm terminating ours and I'm going with his.
That's I'm gonna have to raise my offer or drop my offer.
Well, you don't have to raise it. So the term stays. I just want you to get rid of your contingency, meaning that you're going to close on my house no matter what. Do you see what I'm saying? So we're still staying at the same price and everything. But even if you don't sell your house, you still got to buy my house. Do you see how that works? But if you don't sell your house, or say it falls apart and you breach, I can come back and sue you for specific performance because you promised me you were going to buy it. Y'all see how that works? It can be extremely confusing, and that's what real estate, that's why there's real estate lawyers. Because the fact is that what happens is, if this is Colton's forever home, he said he's going to make it happen. But here's the thing. He may want to make it happen, but there are multiple things that actually on the external that he has no control over. His house never sells.
I don't have the money to buy that.
So that's where you as a real estate agent get to break the bad news to your client.
So you lost the house.
I guess that's when you get really punched out.
Oh yeah, many, many times. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Then there, of course, are other contingencies. Okay. Of course, there can be other things that can be contingent upon certain things. Remember, a contract may be made contingent on just about anything. All right. As long as, and Colton had this earlier, he was on it. We need to know what it is, how long it will last, and how it will be resolved. As long as we have those answers, we make anything contingent. Anything. No matter what it is, we can make it contingent. So I tell a lot of people, this is what's going to differentiate y'all from every other realtor that's taking their school at Champions and all these other schools, is the fact of the matter is y'all are going to know this stuff. I'll tell you why. Y'all ready? Here's the thing. I can't tell you how many times I have a new real estate agent I'm going under contract with or we're negotiating, and they're like, you can't do that. Yeah, I can. No, you can't. You can only do this. What does that say up there? Anything. I can make anything contingent. I have the right to do that. Now, if you don't know and you didn't learn it, that's not my problem. But I can make anything contingent, and I've done it before. You have to understand what you're dealing with. You got to know your contracts. And that's why I say in our next class, when we get to contracts, you're going to learn how to do all this.
But, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yes, Ms. Snopes.
But the thing is, every time you do a contract, it's not always the same.
That's correct. It's not always going to be the same.
Over the period of time, you might forget some of this.
Yeah, that's why you make notes, and that's why you have a broker that's there to support you.
So basically what you're saying is, if you have any doubt, then you need to ask the broker.
Or an experienced agent. Somebody that's been in the field for a very long time. Even myself, I've been in this industry 11 years, a decade and 1 year. Been in this industry, fixing to be 12 years as of January, and I've been in this industry. Okay, I know kind of what I'm dealing with, but the key thing is, and what it comes back to is your contingencies. You can do almost anything you want with it. Okay, you just have to be able to know your information. I love this one. Okay, I want y'all to write this down. Okay. Wyatt, what's that word?
Amend.
Okay. Do y'all agree with that? It's amend, right? Wyatt, what's that word? I want you to write both of those down. I want you to put amend. I want you to put add underneath it.
Right underneath it.
So amend, and underneath amend, put add. Once you do that, after next to amend, I want you to put equal. I want you to put change. Under or next to add, I want you to equal sign. And I want you to put include. Okay. Mr. Garrett, what does amend mean to you?
I guess change something that's already stated.
Very good. And Mr. Garrett, what does add mean to you?
To, I guess, include something else to what was stated.
That's correct. So very good on that. So we're going to go into that. So the thing is, changing something like Mr. Garrett said is in this situation. That means something must have already been there, right? For you to change it. So in this situation, Miss Linda, because you love this, she deals with all my contracts. She loves this. Miss Linda, question for you. Mr. Colton, he's a brand new real estate agent. Brand new. Just got his real estate license. He wrote up a contract, and Mr. Colton has gone over, and everybody signed all the contract. But you, as you were going through it for me before submitting to me for review, Mr. Colton goes over there and he's going through all of the stuff, or you going through all of the stuff, and you noticed that Mr. Colton did not include in the exclusion that his client was going to take the chandelier in the kitchen. Mr. Colton's like, well, that's no big deal. I'll just go in there, grab that contract, and I'm just going to write on here, remove the chandelier. Is that valid?
No.
Why is it not valid?
You have to have a window, or you have to have a change form
What's that word at the top?
amendment. Thank you.
You have to have an amendment. Once all parties have signed the contract, there cannot be any changes to that contract, period. I'll say that again. Once a contract is fully executed and signed, you cannot change that contract by just writing on the contract. You do, and you're one of my agents, we're going to be having a talk, okay? The only way to change or modify the existing content of a contract is through an amendment. Had that issue before. Agent was like, oh, yeah, I need to do that. Send it over. You write anything on that contract after it's been sent over to the title company, you might as well just go write it on a piece of paper, crumble it up, and throw it in the garbage can. That ain't worth it. It ain't worth nothing. You want to change anything in regards to a contract, has to be on an amendment. And it must be signed by all parties. Hold on. I'm going to test Colton here for a minute. I'm testing his knowledge here today. He's probably getting tired of me doing this, but I'm testing him. You ready? Is that second key working for you so far? I'm trying to keep you alert here. All right, so here we go. So Mr. Colton, here we go. You ready? You're the buyer. Actually, no, the seller. We'll make you the seller. You submitted a contract to Mr. Eugene. Y'all ended up signing on, submitting. You forgot in your contract that you were taking the chandelier. So you and Mr. Eugene talk. Mr. Eugene says, yeah, you take it. I don't care. I don't want it. I'm going to tear it down anyway. So Mr. Eugene drafts up a amendment, puts in there, seller to keep chandelier in kitchen. He signs it, sends it to you. You sign it, put it on your desk, and go out of town for your Christmas party. Okay? Is that a valid amendment? Why not? It is. It is. It is. But here's the question. You're close. How does he know that you signed it?
I have to give it back to him.
Ah, that's right. If you sign it, let's come back here for a minute. I like to, in my classes, I like to come around. So he ended up, you drafted it, you sign it, and you said it right here. How does he know you signed it?
Well, I'd have to give it back to him, but before I did that, I probably need to make a copy of it so that way I wouldn't have a copy.
Very good. So you need to make a copy, and then you need to notify him by sending him a copy back. So what can you do? What do you do after he's given it back to you? Where does it need to go? Yes, and where do you send that to? Miss Linda, help him out here. No. Miss Linda, where do we send everything to?
Me?
Yeah, no.
Where are you asking? I'm sorry.
Okay, y'all are fine. You're learning here. So he just signed an amendment, and let's play it on out for Miss Nobles. Everybody online, if you're with me, you'll hear that every form has to go to Miss Nobles. So Miss Nobles, you have now reviewed the contract, okay? And you've gone through it, and Mr. Eugene and Mr. Colton here have all signed it. Everything's good. Everything's back to you. Where does that form need to go?
Then that form will be put into, understand that
No,
information?
nope. The title company. Where did you initially file your paperwork at? The title company.
Yeah,
The title company has to have a copy of the amendment.
right.
Who also needs a copy of that? The lender. You have a lender, the lender needs a copy. See, here's the thing. We're going to talk about this in a minute, or not tonight, but in another class, is third parties. See, that's what happens is third parties get lost a lot in this whole situation. The lenders, the title companies, all of them end up getting kind of lost, okay? They end up getting lost in the whole situation because people don't think about those people, okay? Colton signs it, you signed it, now you give it to Miss Linda. Miss Linda normally would have checked, and she has been off this week, so she's tired. I give her a chance. But Miss Linda normally would have gone through and made sure, has this been sent to the title? Has this been sent to the lender? Does the broker have a copy of this? She'd be checking all those things to make certain that everybody has been notified. Because here's the thing. Even if Colton and Mr. Eugene signed an amendment, and it goes and sits on Mr. Eugene's desk, it's just as worthless as if it was sitting on Colton's desk. Because the fact of the matter is, title company sitting over here going, what are you talking about? We don't know anything. And the lender's over here saying, what are you talking about, the $5,000 concessions? We have no idea of that. So again, you have to not only, if you want to add to the second bullet, it must be signed by all parties, but it also must be sent to the title company, and it also must be sent to the lender. Yes, sir.
So what do you do if, like, let's say that the seller, you want something out of your house, and so the buyer then sends over that paper, you sign it, you get your stuff, and then you make a copy of it, and back to them, or send it back to them, and then they don't ever return it.
So that's why, did you hear what you said just a little bit earlier when I first came back over here? What'd you say? I said, what are you going to do after you sign that paper? What did you tell me? Nope, before that. There you go. So you, to cover your own self, should do what? Send it to the title company as well. It's better for it to be sent twice than never. Do you see what I'm saying? Very good that you called onto that, because not many people ever say that to make a copy. They just don't think about that. That's the reason I have a office manager that double checks all that stuff. But in the situation is most people don't think of that. Do you see what I'm saying? You always want to make a copy of it and send it yourself, just so you cover your bases. Okay, because I've had that issue before in the situation where the buyer does all the stuff, like I said earlier, and there it is sitting on Mr. Eugene's desk. We go to title, and I've had this happen before. I sit down at the title at the deal, and I'm sitting here with my client and all, and I'm going through stuff, and I'm like, hey, didn't y'all agree to a $5,000 concessions here? Well, yeah, I thought we had. Well, did you send it to title? Oh, I was supposed to do that? Not acceptable, okay? Well, it's not too late. You're just going to be, you might end up delaying your closing, because if there's going to be any changes in the monies, it can delay it up to 3 days. So you may have everybody sitting down at the table, and now all of a sudden, there's no closing, because the fact is, the agent didn't submit the paperwork. I've had that happen before. Sat down, my client came in from Austin, we sat down at the table, did all the stuff, and the buyer's agent did not submit the paperwork. $5,000 in concessions. We had to redo all the paperwork and wait 3 days to come back to close. My client was livid. That's why I come back to that situation. Even though you're not representing the buyer, you need to still go for yours so your client doesn't get upset. That makes sense. Okay? Mr.
What I see a lot is that sometimes agents go ahead and they sign one section, but they do not send it back, showing that the other person has initialed or signed. And the office needs both signatures.
That's right. A contract is not going to be classified as fully executed, like we talked from the very beginning of this class. It's not fully executed until both parties have signed and been notified. Both parties have not been notified, or both parties have not signed. It is not classified as executed, period. Okay? And Miss Linda, if you're working with me, Miss Linda will call you on it in a heartbeat. Okay? It's not that she hates you, not that she's ending up being mean. The fact of the matter is that Miss Linda, her job is to make certain that you do not look like a fool when you're sitting down at closing. We've had that happen before. Okay? You don't want to look like an idiot when you're sitting at the closing table. Trust me, you don't. Okay? Now, come back to Mr. Colton, because he loves this. He's been loving this word right here. Right, Mr. Colton? Just love this word. Don't even know what it means. You just like it, right? So, you ready? I'm going to have them help you out here. Mr. Wyatt, what is TREC?
Got it.
Okay, tell him. He got it, but we got to wait here. Let's see here. Got to give you a hard time, Wyatt.
Texas Real Estate
Come on.
License Act.
No, that's Trela. What's the other one?
Oh, wait, that was Trela. I got to put together the Texas Real Estate one, but I don't know what Yeah, go ahead, man. I don't have it highlighted. Texas Real Estate Commission.
There you go, Stephen. Texas Real Estate Commission. Okay. So the Texas Real Estate Commission promulgates. What's promulgate mean, Colton?
Now it's highlighted. It's a big word.
It's a big word. Can you say standardized? That's it. So what does that say right there? What's that bullet 3 say? What's it say? And then use what I just told you. What's the rest of that say? And who is the TREC? Commission. Commission. Be careful there, because they will actually use the word committee and it's incorrect. So Texas Real Estate Commission, and this means standardized. Good?
Yeah.
Exactly. And as you go listen through all the courses, the ones that I've had, you'll see that they love to have a lot of words for the same thing. So you'll see like a seller has 5 different meanings for the word seller. But why would they do that? Yeah, what's the reason, Stefan? Yeah, let's get a bunch of stuff to throw you off quickly as possible. Yeah, in the real world, we say seller. We don't say offeror, offeree, and all this stuff. We just say seller, but they want to confuse you on the test. So the form that you use to amend the contract is what? Read bullet 3.
With the amendment to contract.
There you go. To change the contract, you use the amendment to contract. Does that make sense? So if I need to make a change to my contract, I do an amendment. But let me test you to see if you've been listening. Mr. Garrett, you listening, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, question for you. If I have a contract with you, sir. So me and you are here, we're negotiating, and I say, Garrett, I like everything you put in your offer, except I want to move the closing date to, say, for example, you have the 20th and I wanted to close on the 30th, okay?
Okay.
Do I need an amendment if we have not yet fully signed the contract?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because there isn't did you say the first date was the 21st?
I said 20th. You want to close on the 20th, and I want to close on the 30th.
Because it isn't written down in the contract yet and signed that it's closing on the 20th?
That's correct. It's not fully executed. Very good job there, by the way. Now, what if in this situation, though, Garrett, what happens if me and you signed for the 20th, okay? And then after the fact, I say, well, crap, I need to actually close on the 31st. Now, how do I change it?
Put an amendment in it and have both of us sign it and send it off to, or make copies of it and send it off to the third party.
Okay, real quick, everybody just give Garrett a round of applause because he got that right. Good job, Mr. Garrett. 100%. Great work. So the key thing in that situation is if it has been fully executed, then in that particular situation, then you have to use an amendment to change the contract. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, the next thing that we want to do is what we call an addendum. Now, Mr. Wyatt, what did I say addendum is for? To add. So when I fill out a contract, Mr. Grossman, I'm going to need your assistance here, sir. When I fill out a contract, Mr. Grossman, am I ever going to need to add something to a contract? What was that? All the time. What would I want to add to a contract, Mr. Grossman?
You agree upon something and you need to add something in
To my contract?
the contract.
You mean I got to add more work, more paper to the stupid contract? Yeah, I do. So if you actually go here, and we'll actually pull it up here if you give me just a moment. Let me see if I can't find it real quick for y'all. Just a second here. Let me smooth this right on over here for y'all. Look at all these beautiful, by the way, just want to say this, Miss Linda loves all of these. She loves them to death. Y'all have no idea how much she loves all of these addendums. Look at all these beautiful addendums that you can end up adding to your contract. Aren't they just so beautiful, Colton? Look at all those. Man, just so much more work for y'all. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, all of these can end up being added to your contract.
What is the effective date?
This date right here, effective date, is when that form has been promulgated. What's the other word? There you go. When the broker lawyer committee said, this is what we offer, and Trex says we accept it, once it goes into effect, that's the date that form has gone into effect. Yes, sir. That makes sense. Now, he asked a very good question. He said, what exactly is this effective date? What are these effective dates on the side? That's the side where Trex has said, we have accepted this form as a standardized form, a promulgated form, and beginning this date, you can start using that form. However, You weren't here for this one, and I'm going to go into this. I'm going to test Mr. Wyatt here for a second. Mr. Wyatt, what happens if you printed off this form, had a bunch of them printed off, and this effective date changed to 01/01/2021, and your form says 03/01/2019? Which form can you use on a contract? No. Let me step you through it again. You ready? Okay. This is the effective date. You printed a bunch of these off because you're like Linda back there. You love paper. You don't like computers. Okay. Print a bunch of these off. You had them in your folder in your desk. Okay. Mr. Colton here comes in and wants to put an offer on a house that you want to add an addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal. Your contracts, all the ones you printed off, has this date. Colton comes into your office February 1st, 2021. This date has changed to 01/01/2021. Can you still use the old ones that you have to put in a contract on behalf of Mr. Colton? Look behind you. No. I'll show you something. Look up here. Look up here for a minute. I'm trying to trick you purposely.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I was trying to overthink myself because I was like trying to catch your trick.
I'm bringing this one up here. Looky here. Looky there. Mr. Grossman, you're a licensed agent. What's the problem with that already? Hold on. Mr. Grossman, what's that say right there? And what's that date say right here? That means you're a new form out. Mr. Grossman, can I ask you a question, sir? Can I end up, if my little thing would go away, can I use this form anymore, Mr. Grossman? Why can't I, Mr. Grossman? There is a new form that is in effect. If you end up using this outdated form right here, you can be suspended or lose your license. Okay? Because of the fact is, you cannot utilize this or that form with this new effective date. Does that make sense now, Mr. Wyatt? So listen to him back there for a minute.
So if you print out one wrong form and fill it out or something on accident, you can lose everything.
Mr. Grossman, tell Mr. Wyatt what you were just saying about printing out all the forms.
Yeah, all those forms that you printed out, you're going to have to get rid of them.
It means you get to chunk every one of them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I always tell people all the time, don't print out forms because these forms change all the time. And don't rely on Trek's website to give you the most current form, as you just see here.
So how do you find the most current form?
That's what your broker should be paying for, a form database. Their job is to make certain that you have the most up-to-date form. We utilize zip forms. There's multiple different places out there, but you don't ever rely on this, because you rely on this, you could basically lose your license. You have access. Like when you come to me, I'd sponsor you, you get access for it.
I think that I would have access to that side, meaning I can print off the.
That is correct. And fill them out online. Yep. Now, since that's such a huge and very important point, I'm going to go to everybody. Garrett, do you understand that, sir? What we just talked about?
Yes, sir.
Keith, do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Mr. Jacob, are you good, sir?
Yes.
Perfect. Mr. McLean, Darren, you good, sir? I'll make sure I got everybody. Awesome. Perfect. All right. So extremely, extremely important in that situation, because that is something that could get you into a lot of trouble. And so, like I said, I don't want you ending up getting into that. All right. So coming back to this, so that's one of the addendums, and that's kind of why if you go back over here, you see this little link here. It's basically taking you over here to your addendums. So all of these addendums can end up being applied. Now, do you think we're ever going to use this form right here in Bryan-College Station? Nope. Do you think, Mr. Nobles, that we will use the propane gas in the Bryan-College Station area? Possibly. Depends on if you're in the city or if you're in the rural area. Do you think, Mr. Eugene, and Bryan-College Station will ever use this form?
No.
You're telling me we're not by the Gulf Coast anymore?
We are by the Gulf Coast, but if you're inland, you ain't gonna be close to it.
That's right. And so you're not going to use it. Let's see here. Check, see if, what about this one here, Mr. Wyatt? Do you think we'll use that form? Environmental Assessment Threatened of Endangered Species and Wetland Addendum. He's like, what in the world did you just say? Did you talk some kind of crazy language to me? Well, it depends. It depends. Depends on you. Of course, you're not going to use probably the wetlands, but could there be endangered species here? Could there be environmental assessment issues here? Yeah. So there's a possibility on that one.
Yeah, you said they found some endangered spiders and they were building.
That's right. That's right. So again, there are different ones. Here's your seller financing addendum. The person, your client, ever wants to do seller financing, there's an addendum for that. I'm going to tell you something on this situation. Okay. This one right here, extremely important. If your client ever, and this is kind of a sidebar situation, if your client ever says, say, let's do this, Mr. Eugene, Mr. Jacob came to you and said, Mr. Eugene, I want you to sell my home, and I'm going to do seller financing. And I want you to go over and do the paperwork for me on the seller financing. Okay? What do you do, Mr. Eugene? Ah, exactly right. You would fill this out, of course, but the key thing is in this situation is if Mr. Jacob is going to sell his house and have seller financing, it is most important that this form needs to be reviewed by an attorney before it's even completed by anybody, period. And I normally tell my clients when I have that option and somebody wants to do seller financing, I don't even really like to complete this form. I actually have an attorney on retainer. I say, you need to go speak to my attorney. My attorney will handle the situation for you. But again, it is best that an attorney is advised before you ever do any type of seller financing, period. Because what happens is if you do something wrong, you could cost your client thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and you don't want to be in trouble with that. Does that make sense? So while this is good, you need to still have an attorney draft it. Don't go around and say, I can do the paperwork, I can do the paperwork. No, that's not how this works. Okay? Need to be aware of it. Now, again, that is primarily the addendums. Like I said, all of these things are available online. Y'all can all go in there if you want it to look. But we're actually going to go through majority of these in the next class. Okay? Let me see here. Let me see real quick. I think that's our last one. Yes, that is our last one for this evening. All right. So with that being said, that basically takes care of everything on that. I want to go ahead and stop our sharing here. So give me just a second here.